Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ways of Agile podcast. I've got Vlad with me, my co-host. Hey, Vlad,
Hi.
and just us this time. No special guests. However, this is a special episode, I would call it, as we've shifted in the first phase of our podcast where we discussed with IT professionals about how to get into IT. We slowly moved into almost like a season 2 feeling around discovering or taking a deeper dive into the Scrum Guide. And now there's a slight shift as we try to dive even deeper, but using ChatGPT or using AI technology, which eventually it will become a lot more common, a lot more frequently used. So I think it's worth starting to discuss these topics and how Agile will eventually be affected by AI. So today's episode will actually be about the Scrum Guide as a bonus, episode 5. But this time we're gonna have someone special, like, I'm not sure what we called it, but I'll let Vlad describe the exact scenario. However, this person or this entity has created a revised Scrum Guide. So, Vlad, do you want to pick it up and just kind of go over the logic in the ChatGPT prompts and then share the results with us?
Yeah, sure. So, effectively, I'm not sure how most people. I was a bit surprised of how many people still haven't heard of ChatGPT, let alone used it. Although it's the most popular app in the history of the internet. So it's still it just passed 100 million users within the first few months it got launched. So it's definitely people know how to use it. However, or people have heard of it. However, knowing how to use it, I've come across a few techniques that actually get more accurate results from it. And I've played around with it quite a bit over the last few months, and I really want to learn how to use it, the best way to use it, and how to get the most out of it, really. Now, the way that I went about it, and this is kind of the technique that I generally use whenever I use ChatGPT, is you get, funnily enough, more accurate results or more direct results whenever you ask it to role play. You give it a certain persona. Also, you create a character, ask it basically to give you the answer as that character rather than as just ChatGPT. And the answers tend to be a lot more focused and a lot more direct. And I actually used, in this case, GPT-4 to actually create this actual, effectively, persona. So I asked it, taking into account the Scrum Guide, the Agile Manifesto, and expertise from Agile professionals, describe the perfect Agile coach. This is what it came up with, effectively. A lot of them, most of them actually, I would have possibly written them down myself. A few of them have it came up with itself that I found it a little bit intriguing that it added them, but effectively the reason why ChatGPT is so useful that it would have taken me probably a few hours to do this, while it took ChatGPT about 5 seconds. So it's a deeper understanding of Agile principles and practices, excellent communication skills, empathy and emotional intelligence, servant leadership, adaptability and flexibility, technical expertise, strong facilitation skills, ability to inspire and motivate, coaching and mentoring skills, commitment to lifelong learning. This one was a little bit, the last one was especially a little bit surprising. Like, I've definitely. I've never heard it just said out loud. I've heard it almost like suggested in a lot of ways, but I've never heard it just specifically mentioned that this is what one of the characteristics that would make you a really good Scrum Master. Now, in this case, I went with Agile Coach. I wanted it to give it simulate seniority as well.
Actually, so this last point, I actually fully agree with this. And
Absolutely.
one of the interview questions that I use quite often is, how do you learn, or what tools do you use to learn, or what's your preferred method of learning? Because I'm just double checking that whoever I'm interviewing is still keeping up to date with whatever's happening in the world. So yeah, I love the last point there, and I also love the fact that it mentioned empathy.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. So it's not just the tangible skills that you can improve on. Empathies and emotional intelligence as well. These are skills that you don't really see in the Scrum Guide or articles
Yeah.
related to it. So yeah.
They're completely underrated these days, especially, and it's just being. And to be fair, as a coach, it makes sense that you need to understand where the person that you're coaching comes from, or the stakeholder comes from, or we have to understand that. So it, absolutely, making them or basically putting them clearly and directly into a list of 10 features. I think, yeah, really liked the description they gave me, and basically that's what I create the prompt that I gave it. So I said, you are a superhero called Super Agile Coach, SAC for short. So here to save the industry from zombie Scrum, bad Agile practices, and dysfunctional workplaces. You embody all the characteristics you've described above. So I gave it its own description. It's almost like I used it to create its own character. Now, I also, these are some of the criticisms that I fed it that I've come across. I may tend to agree, but I found them quite clear and just direct. And I feel free to disagree with me and give me other criticisms of the Scrum Guide in the comment section. We can continuously add. This is an agile project, so it can work from feedback. But a funny one was, and this apparently originally came from Andy Hunt, one of the signatures of the Scrum Guide, was Agile has come to mean doing half of Scrum badly and using Jira. You have from Alan Holub, the Scrum Guide is harmless, is just all the stuff that people have added to it over the years that has made it awful, which is touches on the fact that it's being misused or misread or misunderstood a lot. And I've come across Scrum Masters that have even passed their PSM1 exams, or even are working as Scrum Masters, junior Scrum Masters especially, that don't quite understand the Scrum Guide. They approach it from a very project manager type of place. So it has a lot, basically, a lot of room to be misinterpreted. Is another comment from Alan Holub, which I found personally found quite intriguing, was extreme programming without Scrum works fine, but Scrum without extreme programming doesn't work at all. So it's effectively goes to the point that Scrum in itself is almost like a shell that you put around something else. It doesn't give you the day-to-day. It is not very specific. So it's what you put inside of it, basically what you wrap Scrum around something else, and what that something else is makes all the difference if Scrum works or not for an organization. And then the Scrum Guide is so easy to cheat or misinterpret and make it dysfunctional. Its original purpose was to make it palatable for management, and then just give it the prompt as SAC. Please rewrite the Scrum Guide in a professional manner so that you take the criticisms into account. Now, this is what it came up with. Effectively, one thing that I've noticed is the first time that I've first going through it, I've noticed that, oh, this is very similar. This is, I I'm struggling to find the differences. So you go through an introduction. It's lightweight, iterative, incremental framework for managing complex work. Everything that we know, that gives you the Scrum theory, Scrum values. Nothing's changed. Maybe they're a bit more condensed, which may or may
I
not.
think that's I'm just gonna step in now.
Yeah.
I think that's so. First time I saw this, I looked at roles, values, events to see if there's anything changed because I was expecting some big changes. But one of the biggest changes, which kind of skipped past me, is the fact that it's so short, it's so condensed. In a way, I like that it's so condensed because it doesn't mess around. It doesn't use 10 or more sentences to describe the same thing. It just goes straight to the point. Like, just one simple example. Like, you have the Scrum Master who has, I think, a bit over a page in the Scrum Guide. The Scrum Master coaches, mentors, and supports the team in understanding and applying Scrum principles and practices. They ensure that the team is effective, collaborative, and continuously improving. And it's right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Is
as
it?
simple as that.
Do you think that you would add anything to the Scrum Master or a description, or is that kind of just okay, nailed it?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, if you were to ask me, if you were to ask, I'm guessing any of the Scrum Masters ever, you tend to add things. You tend to over exaggerate sometimes, perhaps, because I know at least 10 more things that I would add. And looking back to what the Scrum Agile Coach or Super Agile Coach that you created said, yeah, you can add all of those principles to make sure that the Scrum Master is as perfect as he or she can be. So yes, short answer, I would add items, but I don't think it's extremely useful to add them. So I think keeping it as light as possible, as straight to the point as possible, maybe it's a lot better. And I think ChatGPT agrees.
Yeah, well, yeah. Effectively, or at least Super Agile Coach agrees.
Or yeah, Super Agile Coach. So officially, let's refer to Super Agile Coach as SAC to make it easier.
Okay.
One more thing which I want to pick on is the events. And one of the questions and the topics that I've had recently in the past couple of weeks was, should the daily Scrum be 15 minutes or actually half an hour? Because there's a lot of people advocating for half an hour. And here I'm looking at the Scrum events, Daily Scrum. Daily Scrum is a short, focused meeting held daily where the team inspects progress, plans for the day, and identifies any obstacles. So it doesn't say anything about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's short and focused, but it's kind of up to you to decide if that's 15, if that's 5 or 20 or half an hour. Anything more, I think it's doesn't qualify as short. But yeah, that's another thing which is nicely written in my opinion.
Yeah. The only mention of time boxes is for the sprint itself.
Yeah.
Everything else is left possibly quite deliberately open to interpretations, or more to the team's context and the organization's needs.
Yeah, and honestly, I agree with it. Planning usually takes less time, at least in my case, than it's prescribed. Retrospectives may take a bit more time, and it doesn't mean that they're not effective. They can be even more effective. And some of the retrospectives are shorter, like in half an hour you're done. So yeah, I like that part.
Yeah, good, perfect. So the Scrum artifacts, again, very short description. Ensuring quality and technical excellence is another point that it just put it right next to Scrum events, Scrum artifacts. So to address the importance of technical excellence, Scrum teams should incorporate extreme programming (XP) practices or other engineering practices to ensure high quality, sustainable, and maintainable products. Now, I found that interesting. It effectively is probably it's specified extreme programming here because I specified it in the prompt, but
Yeah.
it did add or other engineering practices. But it makes it clear that Scrum by itself is not enough to for the organization, for the team itself. You need something at the core,
It's
something else.
interpretable. I mean, I'm mostly looking at the title for that one. So you need to ensure quality and technical excellence. Like the team should be cross-functional and should be able to deliver quality at the end of the sprint. Well, at every increment, so it doesn't mean at the end of the sprint. So I think ensuring quality is the key factor here. And yes, maybe incorporating other practices, maybe looking at it like that helps you widen your range, or look at the whole framework as something that you can add on things to it to make it better. But yeah, at the same time, quality is the thing that pops up to me.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. And it's the next point as well is it's emphasizing collaboration and continuous improvement. It gives you kind of straight to the point. Scrum teams must embrace collaboration, shared ownership, and continuous improvement. This includes regular reflection on their performance and practices, seeking feedback from stakeholders, and proactively identifying and addressing potential issues.
Yeah, I think this needs to be pointed separately, and especially getting feedback from stakeholders, because this is something that, I mean, I haven't encountered it as much as I wanted to. It happens, don't get me wrong, but I think it should happen more regularly.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes sure that the feedback that you're getting isn't filtered through middlemen, which can slow down, not only slow down, but effectively compromise the direction that you're going in
And not
sometimes.
just through the middleman. Make sure it's not filtered, like even directly. It can be filtered and just say the nice thing, just say, yeah, it was all right, it was good. And then not actually address the fact that perhaps the team wasn't able to deliver the value that you've expected for the past 3 or 4 sprints.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then moving forward, point 8, it's an interesting one: to avoid dysfunctional practices. And I think this is also kind of related to the prompt you mentioned, because there's tendency to have some practices which are dysfunctional, and tendency to implement Scrum badly in companies. And I think it may be nice to have that warning: avoid doing this.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's kind of, especially since it's probably the most, I guess, commonly common mistake made. So
Yeah.
and I absolutely agree. It's because I prompted it that it added and specifically addressed it. But I still think it's a good idea to basically to mention it clearly. It did a very strange thing, which added a conclusion in the middle here and then continued further on with the Scrum Guide. So I'll
Yeah.
continue with the Scrum Guide and come to the conclusion right at the end.
Easier.
Yeah. So education and training. To combat misconceptions and poor implementations of Scrum, it is crucial for organizations to invest in proper education and training for all team members and stakeholders. This includes ongoing learning opportunities, mentorship, and access to resources that support the understanding and application of Scrum principles. Now, I find this very important because it's in my experience that I have come across as like, for our organization to do Scrum, we hire a Scrum Master and that's it, job's done. It's your responsibility, take it away. Nothing else
Yeah.
done. And then it ends up being very dysfunctional because everybody's trying to put on the brakes. Nobody likes change. You end up being or taking education and training seriously and saying, okay, we're as an organization, everybody has to train in order to be better or understand or do agile, do scrum. It's not that we hired the Scrum Master, he's going to handle it, and we're just going to do everything like we've always done it.
Yeah, I mean, even when I worked as a developer, and I mentioned this before, like we worked in the Scrum framework, but I've never read the Scrum guide. In my first years of practice as a developer, I've never read the Scrum guide, and I just joined the team and then do as the rest are doing. So just integrate with what the team is doing. So I never knew what good Scrum is or what Scrum is actually. But I worked in Scrum. So education and training, really important. At least have people look at the basics on day one. And that's it. Even that's a huge plus.
Absolutely.
Right. Point 10. So point 10 is engaging stakeholders and management. So Scrum teams must actively engage with stakeholders and management to ensure alignment of expectations, goals, and priorities. This collaboration supports transparency and promotes shared ownership of the product vision and roadmap. I mean, yeah, so true. Also, this kind of is repeated as they already mentioned, engaging stakeholders. But I think there's an importance in doing that. So I'm neutral to the point. So
yeah,
it should be there.
I think it's also, if in the prompt, if you I've put in Scrum was originally created to make Agile more palatable for management. So I think this is a specifically, okay, we need management involved. And
yeah, could be that actually, because I forgot about the management prompt. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Tailoring Scrum to the organization's needs. So while Scrum provides a solid foundation, it is important for teams to adapt and tailor the framework to their unique context and needs. This may involve incorporating practices from other Agile methodologies or making adjustments to better suit the organization's culture and goals. However, teams must remain mindful of the core Scrum principles and values, ensuring that any adaptation align with the overall intent of the framework. Now, I actually really like this point. I have not. My experience is relatively limited, but using a Kanban board is pretty much like, if you do Scrum, you're gonna use a Kanban board. I don't know of anybody that doesn't.
I mean, I sometimes do it. I also don't do it. So I'm more often than not, I don't use a Kanban board. But depends. Yeah, you can use a Kanban board for your epics. So I guess there's discussions to be had there. But yeah, I think there's a shift from the original Scrum guide, which kind of says you need to use it as it is fully.
Yeah.
To be able to call it Scrum, and it actually says if you use just parts of it, you can, but you cannot call it Scrum. And number 11 here, point 11, says that, remain mindful of the core Scrum principles and values, but you can adapt. So I think this is the world that we live in, where we kind of realize that perhaps we need to be agile with Scrum as well to some extent, and adapt it and keep adapting it to each company's needs or culture. I think it's been mentioned as well here, which you should also shift the culture, but you should also adapt, because culture has a lot of meanings. Culture doesn't necessarily mean that management is bad or stuff like that. So it actually has more and more meanings, and this adaptability, I think it's important.
It is. I'm also kind of thinking the reason, I don't know if this is true or not. It's one of those things that it gives me the impression. The original Scrum guide makes it a lot easier to build certifications around. Adding this into the Scrum guide makes it a little bit harder to kind of what exactly are you certifying it, because it says you use other tools, be creative. It's too open to be something marketable from a certification point of view, which from one point of view I understand why there might be pushback, but from a practical point of view on the ground actually working and doing it, I think is very valuable.
Yeah, it can also backfire, and then you have certifications for everything.
Yeah. Oh, fair enough. Right. And fostering a supportive organizational culture. A successful Scrum implementation requires a supportive organizational culture that embraces the principles and values of the Agile Manifesto. This includes promoting trust, empowerment, collaboration, and an environment in which individuals can thrive and grow. I find it very interesting that, to be fair, I did prompt Sack to build his personality around taking into account the Agile Manifesto, but I didn't prompt him to rewrite the Scrum Guide while taking into account the Agile Manifesto. He did that all by himself, mentioning putting that in.
I mean, it's worth mentioning. It's
no,
an
absolutely.
Agile framework.
But it's definitely interesting that he connected those bits, which I agree they absolutely should. You should absolutely read the Agile Manifesto together with the Scrum Guide. They pretty much go hand in hand. But it's interesting that it makes Scrum an extension of the Agile Manifesto rather than a completely separate thing.
Yeah, and again, everything here seems so logical, and it's so easy to agree with. I think everything SAC has given us.
Yeah.
So trust, empowerment, collaboration, everything, and there's emphasis on some of the things, like collaboration is mentioned quite often. So I think the main point, like as a conclusion, because I think we're gonna go back right to the conclusion.
Yeah.
I think as a conclusion, SAC basically gave us a really short version of the Scrum Guide, which I think it's a lot better because people will will read it if it's just like a blog post somewhere, and then you just go ahead and read it, and it's like 2 pages, and it covers all of the core principles, and it doesn't really overly prescribe. It just says, do this. You can incorporate stuff if you want to. Make sure you avoid dysfunctional practices, so you don't go over the top. Keep in mind the core principles, and let's look at the conclusion, because I'm pretty much saying the conclusion.
Yeah.
Address common criticisms, ensuring a clear understanding of Scrum principles and practices. By adhering to the core principles, values, and practices outlined in this guide, Scrum teams can effectively deliver high quality, valuable products while fostering a culture of collaboration, continuous improvement, and adaptability. So, I mean, I think it's good. I think the updated Scrum Guide keeps the original Scrum Guide's values in check, and then simplifies everything and makes sure that it's readable. It makes a lot of sense, and even adds on a few stuff, which is quite important.
Yeah. No, and then kind of to put it more difficult question to answer. Do you think it's better? It's good. That's good. That it's good. But would you personally be happy to have almost read this instead of reading the Scrum Guide and before becoming a Scrum Master, and not having the Scrum Guide, only having this?
So here's the thing. I mean, I usually avoid general answers, yes or no, because it really depends on the context. But there's two sides to what you've asked, and I want to say yes, and I want to say no as well. So I honestly think it's better, but it's better for someone who's also read the Scrum Guide, if that makes sense.
Right.
Like if this is the first thing you read, there's a lot of stuff which you may just gloss over, and there's not a lot of emphasis put on them. Like you read, all right, what does a PO do? What does a Scrum Master do? What's the development team? And those are like 3 sentences in the new Scrum Guide. And I think for a first-time user, or for a novice, or for someone just getting into IT or getting into Scrum, I think it's important to have a bit more context and to read at least a few more sentences to make sure you understand what's happening in a team. So I think for someone who's been working in the Scrum framework for like a year or so, I think this is on point. It's easy to explain to other people. For someone who's new, I think the original Scrum Guide may be a bit better in the sense that it explains things within more sentences. So yeah, I think that's my answer.
So fair enough. Call this the pocket version of the Scrum Guide.
Yeah. I think it's the pocket version, and it is improved in my opinion. Okay, so this episode was a quick one.
Yeah.
Mostly focusing on the newly updated Scrum Guide, SAC's Scrum Guide. And we're going to use SAC in the future, in future episodes. And we're going to start exploring in the next episodes a bit of AI, Agile, and we're going to look at how to use ChatGPT, for example, for day-to-day Agile stuff, how to become a better coach using ChatGPT, and other topics. So yeah, I think this is going to be really, really educational and really interesting for me, first of all.
No, absolutely. And it's we're going to discuss everything, including limitations, dangers of AI in the next few episodes. We're exploring a lot. We've been exploring over the last few months and kind of playing around with different AIs and what they can be used for. I know how different companies might be a little bit concerned for instance, privacy or data security. We're going to touch on that as well. But I think it's a topic that the industry is going in that direction, whether anybody likes it or not. So it's useful to explore. Beyond that, I'd really love to hear more opinions. So anybody that really likes this video and this episode, please, first of all, like, subscribe. Helps us a lot. We're a tiny podcast right now. But also leave comments. Anything that you think that the Scrum Guide does right, does wrong, and any suggestions for SAC. Anything that might add to his personality or take away, if there's anything that you think that might have been put in there that doesn't help.